And all this time, I thought the world was round. The world is not round. It has edges we can fall from and faces staring in entirely different directions. And I thought the world was huge, but it is not. It's in our hands. We can hold it, change it, turn it, shake it. We can solve it, but not by sheer luck or chance. We must be taught the way.
When we think of poverty in the third world. But poverty exists at the very heart of wealth, in the United States of America. To think of poverty as American, it is necessary not only to consider its sheer existence, but also to ask, how is poverty produced? Why does it persist? And to tackle these questions, we must in turn pose a very specific question. Who profits from poverty? A few years ago, a Business Week cover story revealed the poverty business that was afoot. Reporter Brian Grow described how ambitious corporations were targeting poor Americans, seeing profit in thin wallets. Riding the subway, Grow had noticed an ad placed for auto loans, available to those without good credit histories. But the ad had fine print, finer print, and even finer print. This is the poverty business, and what it shows us is that the poor pay more for everything. Just on auto loans in the US, the poor pay 50 to 60% higher interest rates than those who are well off. From Chicago to Oakland, the poor rely on payday loans and pawn shops for financial services. In the slums of India, the poor pay exorbitant rents in order to live in miserable shacks. In sub-Saharan Africa, the poor buy water at obscenely high rates. It is not just that the poor pay more for everything. It is also that such transactions are highly profitable for those selling the poor such goods and services. This is the poverty business, where the vulnerability of poverty becomes the grounds of profit for companies and corporations. Now you may say that there is nothing unfair about this. Buying and selling represent economic freedom. This is how markets work. One of my favorite books on markets is Karl Polanyi's The Great Transformation. Kids, don't graduate from college without reading this book. In it, Polanyi explains that what seems to be free enterprise is often princely monopolies, a term we can usefully borrow to think about today's poverty business. Polanyi thus distinguishes between the freedom to exploit and the fullness of freedom, which includes freedom from economic suffering. Writing in 1944, Polanyi expected that markets, guided purely by self-interest, because they wreak havoc on human societies, would be replaced by other types of economies. Today, a new round of crises in markets has generated great interest in alternative economic models, including those that can combine poverty and profits without exploitation and predation. Take the case of microfinance. The practice of making tiny loans to the poor, especially poor women, microfinance is seen to be a poverty panacea. It has also turned out to be profitable. One such microfinance company is Compartamos Banco. Its philosophy is that profits allow microfinance to reach scale, to serve millions of the world's unbanked poor. Compartamos reaches over 2 million poor women and maintains an annual profit margin of over 30%. Oh, by the way, did I mention that it charges annual interest rates of nearly 100%? Thus, Muhammad Yunus, founder of the Grameen Bank of Bangladesh, and commonly considered to be the father of microfinance, has accused Compartamos of being a loan shark. Microcredit was created to fight the moneylender, not to become the moneylender, Yunus notes. But wait, Compartamos cannot be so easily dismissed as a predatory lender. It is part of a new generation of businesses that seek to do good and make profit. Companies that audaciously claim that they can serve unbanked poor women and billionaire investors. I'm at the Microfinance USA conference on a panel with the co-founder of Compartamos, who explains the company's triple bottom line. Let's listen.
We've always labeled ourselves as a purpose-driven company, a company that's trying actually not only to provide two bottom lines like you mentioned, but three bottom lines, which are social value, economic value, and human value. Now, what we mean by social value is we try to provide financial access to financial products to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. Economic value, I think it's easily defined by anybody. And human value...
You mean profit?
Profit, yeah.
Is the act of selling a product or service to the poor, in this case at high interest rates, social value? Is this what it means to do good? Held just a few blocks from Wall Street, the Microfinance USA conference took place in the shadow of the subprime crisis. It seemed that microfinance had become the new global subprime industry, one in which the poor could get access to credit, but only as high-risk borrowers subject to high-interest loans. Were microfinance loans transforming the lives and livelihoods of poor women, or was microfinance simply making debt profitable for microfinance companies? No, said participants at the Microfinance USA conference to the subprime label, instead calling for a code of ethics to regulate microfinance. We are not loan sharks, they declared. We are poverty activists. But the debate about poverty and profits is far from over. In a highly influential business school treatise, C.K. Prahlad had argued that instead of patronizing poverty programs and ritualistic welfare schemes, the poor should be treated as consumers, as neglected markets waiting to be tapped by the world's multinational corporations. Not only would this return human dignity to the poor, Prahlad contended, but also it would allow fortunes to be made at the bottom of the pyramid, what I call bottom billion capitalism. The dream of eradicating poverty through profit is not new. In late 18th century England, one of the most famous philosophers of liberalism, Jeremy Bentham, conceived of a national charity company where paupers would be put to work and shareholders would reap handsome profits on their investment in this company. Both the poverty program and free enterprise, Bentham's industry houses never fully materialized, but their architectural design became the basis for the modern prison, the panopticon. What is striking about all of these schemes is that while profits are made on the labor of the poor, or the consumption of the poor, or the debt of the poor, they're not profitable for the poor. Who profits from poverty? Surely not the poor. What then will it take to build a pro-poor economy? In Bangladesh, one organization shows the way. The world's largest development NGO, BROC, is known for its microfinance loans. But that is a misperception, because what BROC is really doing is transforming how the poor find a foothold in local, national and global economies. BROC knows that it is pointless for the poor to get microloans if they remain trapped in sheer survival and subsistence. And so BROC insists on transforming the entire economies within which the poor must trade, in poultry, in dairy, in textiles. There's a much-quoted proverb in the world of development that I hate. Give a man a fish and you will feed him for a day, teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Bullshit. Do the poor really not know how to fish? Bullshit. And what good is it to be taught to fish if the rights to fish are owned by powerful landlords and if the river is polluted by upstream tyrants? And what good is it to be taught to fish if one has to sell one's fish to princely monopolies who command unfair prices? What BROC does is simple but radical. It challenges the rules through which markets are organized. It changes the political economy of fishing rather than teaching the poor how to fish. For me, this is an innovation. An IPO is not an innovation, a financial derivative is not an innovation, the poverty business is not an innovation. A pro-poor economy is an innovation. So if I return to my opening question, who profits from poverty? I could answer it by simply stating that capitalism profits from poverty. but I want to be able to say more. For this, I must turn to what Jota Izquierdo, a brilliant artist and scholar, calls yellow capitalism, or capitalismo amarillo. Documenting the creativity of traders in the Tepito street market of Mexico City, this project shows us how these informal markets sustain the poor. Take a look at Abel Carranza and the speaker packs he creates to sell CDs on the sidewalks and subway lines of the city.
Bueno, entonces de aquí nos vamos a la mochila mediana, que es esta. Esa mochila mediana trae bocinas que se llaman marca Panasonic. Yo también lo modifiqué. Como verán, aquí está la entrada del cable. También se lo corté porque pues, a mí no me convenció. Entonces le tuve que cambiar otro tipo de cable. Este cable se llama POT. Este cable también me iba a ayudar mucho para que el audio me saliera un poquito más exacto. O sea, tiene que ver mucho el cable también. Y adentro lo relleno con...
This too is innovation by the poor, not innovation for the poor. The traders of Tepito are seen as pirates. They remind us of the peculiarity of profit. While the opportunism of the wealthy is celebrated and rewarded, while the poverty business thrives on what it terms opportunity pricing, the opportunism of the poor is often criminalized. But as one of my students tweeted, when the poor have access to the same technology as those who can afford it, then piracy laws can apply to them. I do not offer Tepito's pirate traders as an example of a way out of poverty. I do not want to romanticize what is a hard life and a fragile livelihood. But the Tepito traders remind us of the difference between the poverty business and the businesses of the poor. If we are so bold as to reinvent capitalism in the 21st century, if we are so audacious as to talk about social value, then our concern must be with whether the poor can challenge the rules through which profits are extracted and markets are organized.